Hey VC, it's Dave here, and thought I would contribute to a thread that's going around asking questions for 2019. I just got off watching Steve Carlson's thread, and before him I saw one by Rob over at Sounds Strange, and then also Dave at Local Bandography. He did one as well, so I thought I'd contribute. I do like stuff like this because it kind of informs you what some of the what people like in music, what they don't like, and kind of like gives you a little bit of background on the different VCers. So anyway, I thought I'd contribute a little bit. The first question was find of the year, and I guess it would be this, which is one I showed on my last video, which is Aka Moon. It's a box set, and it's sort of avant-garde jazz, but they're pretty broad in their approach. It's like a 20 CD set, and they also jam with other musicians. It's basically three guys, but they also jam with other musicians, and they kind of have a little bit of a world sound to their music as well when they do that, from anything from Indian music to African, and maybe a little bit of island music as well. But yeah, the main thing is like the three main members are saxophone, bass, and drums, and then they augment that sound with these other musicians. And sometimes they'll have a keyboardist, and sometimes they'll have a guitarist as well. So anyway, there's that. And then also lately I've been listening to this. It's one I picked up earlier in the year. This is John Cage, Complete Piano Music. This is volume 1, and it's his prepared piano series, where he augments the sound of the piano by tying, putting different things in between the strings of the piano and giving it a different sound. Who needs more subs is the next question, and I'd say Rob over at Sounds Strange. I've been listening to a lot of his record reviews and everything. He likes a lot of classical music, which I do too as well, and I'm always interested in hearing about people that I don't know about, particularly in the realm of the style of music that I like lately. And also I'd say Jacob over at Moon Rock. I just like the way that Jacob presents himself. He's pretty laid back and pretty likable over the tube. So I'd say both those two guys. Jacob is up in the Denmark area, on an island off of Denmark, and Rob is a Irishman that's living in Spain now. What draws me into a record store? Well, I'd just say, trying to discover something. I mean, I grew up with records, so I'm a child of the 60s really, and even before that, even the 50s too. So I don't know, I've always been around vinyl. My parents always had a record player, and grew up listening to the radio. So I mean, also being a child of the 60s, in the 67, 68, 69, 70, even going on into the punk era and whatever from there on. I mean, records were always a big part of my life. So it's just going into a record store and the joy of hunting, maybe trying to find a bargain here and there. So there's that, and maybe just discovering somebody I don't know about. Maybe somebody working in the record store will, you know, point out something, or I'll hear something. I went into one of the local record stores today, and the guy was playing something I wasn't familiar with, and I don't remember the band that he was playing, but it was kind of a combination of pop and psychedelia. But enjoyed it. It was pretty fun. Cheap records that are good. Well, I would say here's some cheap records that are good. This is a guy named Dave Bromberg. He's played with Bob Dylan along with a lot of other musicians, and he's kind of a combination of bluegrass, a finger-picking style. Sometimes he'll do cover songs, and sometimes he'll do songs that are a little bit whimsical. I think on one of these he plays with George Harrison, helps him out on a song, but on this one he does a rendition of Statesboro Blues, and there's Kansas City, and I don't know, this is probably my favorite album by him. This is Midnight on the Water, and it's a little bit, goes into a little bit different direction than these other ones I'm showing, but it's really well put together, and like I said, he sings and plays acoustic and electric, and his music is pretty varied, but yeah, he's really a good musician. So those are you can find those on Discogs for, I don't know, around $1 a piece. And if you're into like the whole singer-songwriter thing, you'd probably enjoy those. Favorite side project? Let's see here. I've got two. This is Fire Hose, which were actually were a band, and I don't know if this qualifies, but they were a band made up of the members of the Minutemen out of LA. Once their main guitarist D. Boone died, well, these guys formed a band with this guy named Hurley. So you've got oh golly, I don't know if I can remember. Let's see, Mike Watt and the drummer, I forget the drummer's name, but Mike Watt played the bass, and you got this Hurley guy on guitar. And their music is really different from what the Minutemen were doing. If you just take it on its own, you know, don't try and compare it to the Minutemen. I mean, there's a little bit of that there, but you know, it's kind of different too. It kind of gets a little bit more mainstream rock, but yeah, I don't know, pretty interesting little side project band. This is another one. This is Steve Hackett's album. He was, of course, the guitarist for Genesis, and it is Voyage of the Alkalite, but nice artwork. But if you enjoy Genesis, this is his first album. It's a really wonderful sort of symphonic rock album, just, you know, in the style of Genesis too. But you know, if you enjoy Genesis the band, you're sure to like this one as well. Songs uncharacteristic in an artist's discography. Well, I would say this one probably, and this is Joni Mitchell's last album, Shine, and the reason that it's so different is because most of her stuff is either singer-songwriter or you know, folky, and then also later in her later years she was getting more into a jazz type vibe. This almost has like a classical influence to it, and as much as I hate to say it, I don't like this album as much as some of her other ones. I could probably stand to listen to it a little bit more, but I was a little bit let down by it. But you know, I had to pick it up, it just being Joni Mitchell, because she's one of my favorite musicians. Yeah, still listening to that. Last album purchased was probably this one, and it's not even on an album, it's a download that I did from Amazon. This is Sophie Wilke. Sophie Wilkes. It's either W-I-L-K-E, Sophie Wilkes. It's called Quiet Magic, and it's what she goes by. And Ocean Calling is the name of her album. And it's kind of a dream pop, electronic dream pop thing. I'll try and leave a link below if I can remember. But I saw a little blurb of hers on YouTube, and she was actually doing a traveling video where she was riding a bike through Norway, and I saw where, you know, as her job she was the musician, so I looked her up on the web. In Bandcamp, you can sample some of her stuff on Bandcamp. She put out a really neat album, which is this one, which is sold out. And actually, I think that was just on CD. But she included a little bit of a book, and it looks like a booklet that she had put together of her lyrics on this album, which are interesting lyrics. I like her lyrics. They're kind of dark in a lot of ways, and anyway, I thought it was interesting enough, so I went over to Amazon, found the link, and you know, downloaded this from Amazon. But anyway, she should be working on a new album. She's a multi-instrumentalist. She plays piano and guitar, and I saw recently where she had bought a new harp and was learning some music on the harp. So, interesting musician. It's called Ocean Magic. What holes are you trying to fill in my collection? Well, I'm not really trying to fill in any holes. Anymore, I'm not really a completist on any band. I was actually, and still am to a certain degree, a big Frank Zappa fan. But I kind of got broke on that. I bought The Man from Utopia by Frank Zappa, and then after that I bought Thingfish, which was a kind of on a play that he did. It was a box set thing. Eventually got rid of both of them, but it kind of broke me of being, you know, a completist, because, you know, all artists have musicians have their ups and downs, and some of their albums are better than others, and some albums aren't very good and don't appeal to me. So right now, where I'm at collecting stuff, I just soon, you know, there are a lot of people I've not heard yet, and there are a lot of genres in, say, classical or jazz or whatever, that I'm still interested in hearing. So you know, I just kind of go in with an open mind and look around, and whatever appeals to me, that's what I get these days. Let's see, bad album cover, good record. So bad album cover, good record. I would say maybe this might be a bad album cover. This is Moving Gelatin Plates, and the name of the title is The World of Genghis Khan. Genius, The World of Genius Hans. Excuse me. But it's an all-instrumental album, kind of a progressive jazz album. Pretty interesting though, although the cover, like I said, is pretty ugly. But their music is, like I said, jazz, but it's a progressive jazz, and it's real kind of interesting that it's kind of sludgy in a way. It's kind of rough, but I kind of really like it for that reason. They're out of Europe, and I can't remember what country they're from. They may be German or Belgium or something like that. But yeah, Moving Gelatin Plates. Ugly album, but pretty neat music. And here's another one that's more common. This is Close to the Edge by Yes, progressive rock band. And after all those nice Roger Dean album covers, I thought this album cover here was a little bit of a letdown. Although having said that, Close to the Edge is probably one of my favorite Yes albums. It's really wonderful, and every time I put it on, you know, I'm amazed by the music in it. The next is a good album cover, Bad Record. Well, this one I'm still kind of listening to and hoping I'll warm up to, but so far I haven't, and I thought the album cover was rather interesting. But it's a Zool type music, which is sort of like a this is the music that was more or less influenced by the French band Magma, and there are a lot of other Zool type bands. But this happens to be a Japanese band, and that's the guy's name right there, which I won't try and pronounce. The name of the album is Anger Sispa, and just bass, drum, keyboards, vocals, and reeds. But as far as Zool music goes, I generally like the Zool. I don't mind Zool music. I got, you know, several albums of that type stuff. But anymore, I've kind of gotten to where I prefer the Zool music without any vocals or minimal vocals on it. I don't care for the vocals and the chanting and everything. It kind of drives me a little bit crazy, to tell you the truth. But I'm still listening to this. I don't know if I'll end up keeping it or whatever. But I was a little bit disappointed by it. But yeah, there you go. It's a good album cover, bad music, as far as I'm concerned. Let's see here. The next one was a blues album. I'll show this one here. Got a lot of blues albums. This is Ry Cooder's Boomer Story, and I was listening to it the other day, and I thought, wow, that is really a great album. He kind of starts out with an album that's kind of reminded me a little bit reminiscent of the band's music off of Big Pink. And then he goes into, he plays slide guitar. He kind of plays some blues on here, along with some kind of Depression era music. And I don't know if you've ever heard the song Dark End of the Street. He plays that on here. And he probably does a few covers too. I know he did there's some blues covers on it. If I'm not mistaken, Sleepy John Estes, there's a song by him on here. And, well, some other blues musicians. Skip James, Cherry Ball Blues is on here. But, yeah, he does covers and does them his own way. But really excellent musician. You can't hardly go wrong with, oh golly, his first, you know, his early albums, his mid albums. He's an excellent slide guitarist and vocalist too, and his repertoire that he picks is always really fun to listen to. Can't hardly go wrong with any Ry Cooder, really. Let's see here. Important Records. Is that right? What's next? Yeah, Important Records. Well, generally, I would show this one here because it's really, which I've shown a lot of times before, but it's sort of the one album that kind of got me into avant-garde music, which is the, you know, Freak Out by the Mothers of Invention and Frank Zappa. It helped to get me into listening a little bit deeper in music and sort of got me interested in listening to more avant-garde music. But I'd also say this band here is pretty influential. Genesis Live, which may be my favorite album by them, but I can't think of a more influential band other than, say, Yes and maybe Pink Floyd as far as progressive music goes, and particularly this album here as far as progression and symphonic rock. They influenced a lot of bands that went on to create that sort of symphonic rock sound. So Genesis Live. An album influenced by my parents. Well, that would be this one, I guess. This is Glenn Campbell's live album. When I was a lot younger, we went to the Hemisphere down in San Antonio and watched the Glenn Campbell Comedy Hour. Came on after the Smothers Brothers. The Smothers Brothers got pulled off the air for being too political. And they eventually substituted their TV show with the Glenn Campbell Comedy Hour, and he had different bands on.